An excerpt from the novel Mass Effect Andromeda, Nexus Uprising. In the hall outside, Sloane went to the nearest comm panel and punched in her first officer's ID. Thank all hell they managed to lock down the comm systems while she worked her ass off with Kesh. She didn't want this one blared over every speaker, then thrown in her face when the Solarian wanted something later. Kandros here, his reply came a minute later. It's Sloane, she said. Can you talk? A shuffling sound, then the click of a door closing. Yeah, go ahead. She considered her words carefully and made doubly sure Tan and Addison had not joined her in the hall. Satisfied, she angled herself to the best possible surveillance vantage and kept her voice low. Put together a team of officers led by Tellini, trustworthy people. How many? Enough to guard the supply rooms that are actually accessible. Supplies were cached all over the Nexus, but the bulk of the station remained cold and airless, inaccessible due to damage. Sloane saw no need to put soldiers in front of those doors. Not yet, at least. Have we got a problem? Kandros asked. Negative, she said. But it's only Tuesday if you follow. Heh, yeah, I follow. Good. Sloane out. She killed the link and went off in search of Nakmor Kesh. Her path wound through one debris-strewn hall after another. She passed a series of apartments that overlooked one of the Great Arms. Their doors, less robust than those on the cryostasis rooms, had all torn off now and lay in an oddly neat row on the opposite side of the hallway, as if a construction crew had placed them there in preparation for installation. On a whim, she paused at one room and stepped inside. One of the smaller layouts, barely more than a bed, table, and chair. No personal belongings. Those would all be in deep storage until whoever had been assigned this room came to get them. If they were even still alive. Hell, Sloane hadn't even seen her quarters since before they launched, all shiny and new. Who even knew if that section of the station had survived? The thought left a wistful pain in her chest. So much for her own office, right? Much less bed. Sloane sighed, turning her back on the lonely room, and left. She reached the end of the hall, turned, and pushed on, past the shuttered transportation office, then immigration's. The chances that either would ever be staffed and actually used seemed so remote that she wondered if they might be better off turning them in the shelters. A soft noise behind. Sloane drew her firearm, whirled, and aimed. Just me! Just me! Jaren Tan said hastily, hands up. Sloane narrowed her eyes. Are you following me? Of course, he replied, then appeared to think better of what he meant. I mean, not in that sense. What other sense is there? He stepped out of the shadows. In the awkward sense of two people who have finished a conversation but also need to travel in the same direction. She eyed him. She'd be damned if she ever taken to Solarian expressions. Turian faces were one thing, but there wasn't enough. I don't know, she thought distantly. Not enough lines. Not enough distinct features on the amphibious faces of the Solarian species. The horns were easy enough to recognize. Large oval eyes, sure, but they all had those. Whatever the reason, she wasn't sure she believed him. Tan took her silence as a lack of understanding.
I was returning to operations and thought I'd let you get well ahead of me to avoid any of the aforementioned awkwardness, and you stepped out of an apartment only meters in front of me. It felt odd to stand there and wait, so It's okay, Tan, I get it. Then perhaps you could lower the weapon? Sloane did so, doing her best to hide a grin. She'd scared the hell out of him, she realized, and found she didn't mind so much. A little fear could be healthy. So, ops, huh? What's on your agenda next? And get the hell over here, I don't bite. The Solarian did his best to look casual as he crossed the rest of the gap and fell in beside her. They walked in silence for a bit. Not for lack of words, Sloane realized as the Solarian hummed one of his thoughtful noises. He was a thinker, this revenue wonk, the kind that weighed every word. Which didn't make him any more trustworthy, all things considered. It's so hard to prioritize, he finally said, with so many problems facing us. Yep, no argument here. He nodded. I felt after our meeting that I finally had a free minute. I thought I might check on something that's been bothering me. Just one thing? The Solarian paused, sliding Sloane a thoughtful, cautiously amused look. At least, she thought it was that. No, he said, and that caution gave birth to a weak smile. No, but let us focus on this one thing in particular. Which thing? Specifically, the thing, he said, stressing the word as if pleased by the byplay that led to it, that we ran into. Whatever it is foreign to us, or the sensors would have noticed it and alerted someone. The sensor arrays have been damaged, she pointed out. Were they? He laced his thin hands together, tucking them into the sleeves of his attire. Or did the technicians believe they were, based on the inability to parse the data? Her eyebrow raised. Okay, so? Doesn't change anything. No, he allowed. But I am worried it was not a singular event. Ah. She thought about this too, especially whenever she tried to sleep. With so many known problems, worrying about unknown ones seemed pointless. But now that he brought it up, she worked it over. When we located Ops the first time, she said thoughtfully, it was a violent quake. The whole ship lurched and it sounded like the hull peeled back somewhere. Weakened structure failing, perhaps? He cocked his head. Or another meeting of station and whatever we had run into. If it was a run-in, she pointed out, I saw no ships. Her words went dead. So did her pace, frozen in the middle of the corridor. Tan's brow moved in what she took for inquiry. You saw something? Maybe. She frowned, pinching the bridge of her nose between thumb and forefinger. Everything was one large adrenaline rush. Ah. Tan patted her arm cautiously in what passed for sympathy. Understood. Human evolution is predicated on the rise of prey to predator, but it never truly evolved redundant systems to effective process. Tan... He stopped, cleared his throat. Adrenaline, he said way more succinctly, can play havoc with logical thought. That she would buy. Sloane picked up her pace again, once more flanked by the Solarian. The clearest thing I remember is that nebula out there, or some kind of energy wave. I saw it hovering near the part of the station that ripped off. She was reaching, and she knew it. She raised her hands. I'm not an astrophysicist, so take your pick. But I can't shake that there's something there. Something we haven't seen yet. Or missed. Tan glanced at her. Without sensors, it is impossible to find out. However, I thought perhaps if we studied the data gathered before we impacted this, you believe the unusual nebula to be the key? It's the only thing I saw, she said, shrugging once more. And given how close it is, I'd be really pissed off if we ignored it, only to run into it later. A fair assessment. We shall earmark that theory as among the first to investigate, Tan said. With so little argument, Sloane found herself eyeing him sidelong as they walked. In fact, I rather relish the idea of learning something new about our new galaxy. You? Well, of course, he replied, gathering himself up. Who else is available to decipher the logs? There could be a great deal of information buried in even partial records. I guess the devil's in the details. To her surprise, he gave a little chuckle. One of my favorite human idioms. Yes, exactly. Even if our systems did not recognize the coming assault as a threat, it may still have a record of it. And you'll be able to figure this out? She asked. It seemed the least she could do to try for sincere. All things considered, sensor data tech seemed less intrusive than acting director. I thought revenue was your area of expertise. At this, his slender shoulders straightened. It was hard to tell, but she thought his skinny Solarian chest may have even puffed up some. Math is my expertise, he declared. Sensor logs are not so different from cost-basis figures. If you say so. They walked a bit farther, passing one of the huge common areas. It should have been filled with excited pioneers holding flutes of champagne. Instead, it resembled a dumping ground for unwanted furniture. A disaster, like everything else. Still, she mused, what happens if it's, actually in our way? We can't move, we can't shoot an invisible target. Hence my comment about priorities, he said. Do we fix hydroponics first, so that we can eat in the weeks or even months to come? Or do we get the maneuvering engines back online so that we can avoid another collision? Plus, there is the possibility that this is widespread. We may need to alert the Pathfinders. Of all the things weighing on her mind, preying on her sleep, the Pathfinders had been firmly shunted aside, at least until now. If they, still in stasis, coasted into this mess. She rubbed at the bridge of her nose with one finger. Tan, you're giving me a headache. It is a difference between us, I think, Tan said. Forgive my presumption, but you prefer narrowly defined problems. Whatever is pressing at the moment gets all of your attention, and when that is fixed, you turn to whatever waits just behind. And you're a big picture kind of guy, is that what you mean? Another lovely phrase. She stopped. They were at the door to operations, and he hadn't seemed to notice. Where are you going with all this, Tan? Just making conversation, he said, already large eyes wide. Right. He sighed. Okay, your sharp investigation skills have seen through my sinister plan. Sloane's turn to laugh. Even for him, that was too patently false a surrender. She gestured for him to go on. What I'm trying to say, Sloane, is that if, for example, I do discover that we will need maneuvering capability straight away, and I suggest as much to you and Addison, I ask that you keep in mind my methodology. In other words, if I ask for engines, it's because the math says we need them more urgently than we need seeds. It's more than just math, though. Sloane frowned down the length of the empty corridor. People are hurt. People are dead. Are you saying that if you come to me claiming we should fix engines instead of, I don't know, life support, I should just accept the goddamn math and not question you? I'm asking for a little trust. If the data says that fixing life support now might save 10 lives, but fixing engines would kill the 10 yet save thousands later, then we should fix the engines. Damn. That's cold. Even for Solarian, that's cold. So is the universe, on average. However, he continued, as if ordering some kind of extra, I can promise you that while I am busily applying mathematical value to the immediacy of any situation, other parts of my vast intellect are experimenting with other options. He gave her what she imagined he thought a friendly grin was. Maybe all Solarians tended to look snide. Maybe it was just him. Sloane shook her head, her goodwill fading. It left her as cold as his calculus. So, you're saying I should trust you twice over, she said slowly. Her incredulity mounted with every word. Once that your math is rock solid, and the other that you'll come through with better options? She barked a short laugh. You're right, Tan. It is a difference between us. So let me give you another piece of data to analyze. She shoved a finger in his direction, only narrowly missing his bony chest. Acting director or not, if your math says to do X for some potential future benefit, and my gut says save someone's life right fucking now, my gut is going to win every time. That clear? He studied her for a moment, once more tucking his hands into his sleeves. Then with a slight nod, he murmured, abundantly. The door to operations hissed open, and Nakmor Kesh came lumbering out. Unprepared for the sudden company, Tan almost fell over his own feet leaping out of her way. Sloane didn't even bother hiding her snort, at least until the Krogan's gaze met hers. Oh shit, what now? Kesh's large head swung around to pin on Tan, who busily attempted to right his dignity. At the weight of her silence, however, he stopped fussing with his apparel and frowned. What happened? The Krogan's voice graveled low. Jen Garson. Before either could leap to questions, she shook her head. They found her.